2011 World Touring Car Championship season starts this weekend with a new era of 1.6-litre turbo engines. Tom Coronel will be driving a Royal MotorSport BMW, and we went along as Tom went testing near Rome. Chevrolet's Rob Huff also shows us how drivers fill their days during the off-season. And we'll also bring you up to date with the new rules, the calendar, Volvo's arrival, and we'll catch up with Tiago Monteiro. Well, the big news for 2011 is the 1.6-litre engine rules, the new global engines, Chevrolet testing in Barcelona, BMW in Vallelunga. It's all going to be a new playing field for 2011. The engines with more power and far more torque will produce very different handling cars. Well, Andy Priaulx and Augusto Farfus won't be racing the cars, but they have been testing the new BMW 320 TC. We caught up with Augusto Farfus to find his thoughts on the brand new generation of engines.
Da pilota, quanti più cavalli hai, quanto più coppie hai, più ti diverti. Quindi alla
well, as a driver, the first thing you notice is you get more horsepower and much more torque, so more fun. For me, the FIA's decision to switch to the 1.6 turbo is a good one. It goes in the same direction that the manufacturers are taking anyway, smaller engines, less CO2 emissions, but maintaining the horsepower. And I think the cars will still continue to put on a great show. The championship will perhaps be more balanced now because everybody starts on the same basis. Once everybody's got the 1600 turbos, we won't have any more problems with differences between petrol and diesel engines and so on that we've had in the past. And in terms of drivability, well, how do the new cars feel?
The drivability is very different to last year's engine, the normally aspirated engine. The reliability, we don't know how that's going to be, although we've done quite a bit of testing, so we're semi-confident. And the benchmark against other teams, we don't know what they've done yet, so it'll be interesting.
With the turbo, it delivers a lot of power in a very short amount of rev, so it's quite difficult to control, but it's what we're working on a lot in the testing, the drivability of the car, trying to smooth the acceleration curve out as much as possible to maintain the tyres, consistency of driving, and basically just trying to make the car easier to drive all the time.
Well, tyres the magic word then. What about tyre wear? Is that going to be an issue? A world champion Ivan Muller says certainly the car is very different to drive. Last year we had a normally aspirated engine, very linear in its acceleration. This year with a turbo, when you open the throttle, the acceleration's not progressive, and that really puts the front tyres under quite a lot of pressure. And that's something that we're going to have to learn to deal with, not so much in qualifying when we'll have new tyres, but certainly during the races we'll really have to take care of the tyres, and especially when we're racing in very hot conditions. And of course that's likely to apply from the opening race in Brazil. And brakes could also be much more of a factor than ever.
We're now about 8 kilometer to 10 kilometer faster on the straights, so also the braking force and the braking heating up, and this friction thing is also going to be more difficult. If you are attacking a corner with more speed, of course, the limit is more close.
Well, will the introduction of the new engines change the status quo? Ivan Muller thinks yes. He said the advantage that we at Chevrolet had last year is definitely gone because the car's 50% new. So we're still able to fight for the championship, maybe, but I think can't tell you now. We'll have to wait for the answer after the first races, then we'll have a better idea of where everybody is.
I think the BMW is maybe a little bit stronger at the moment because of the tire consumption. But in reality, if you have a front-wheel drive car, you're 2 meters further ahead, so yeah, it's more easy to accelerate out of the corner. So I just think that the consumption of the front-wheel drive cars will be maybe a little bit stronger than the rear-wheel drive cars. So in the long-distance run, so at the end of the race, we should, with the BMW, we should be strong to challenge the front-wheel drive cars.
And do the new engines mean a change in the driver's role within the equation?
The driver's really going to play, for me, a much bigger role. Before, with the S2000 car and a lot of the tracks which were quite smooth and not very abrasive, they didn't work the tyre too hard, you could push the whole race no problem, 110%. You could almost do a qualifying lap every lap, and you would make it to the end of the race no problem. I think with the more power that we've got, we're really going to have to be very, very clever with how and when we use the tyre. For instance, I think out of maybe a 12-lap race, I think you're going to be able to sort of do maybe 7 laps where you're really pushing hard qualifying, but then the other sort of 5 laps you're going to have to back off 10 or 15% to let the tyre recover effectively. And I think you're going to have to be very, very clever this year to know when to push, when not to push.
Well, BMW and Chevrolet will both race with their new 1.6-litre turbos from the season opener this weekend in Curitiba. Volvo should be ready for the second event at Zolder, and Sunred, with at least one Seat arriving in May with the new power units. La Bella Roma, the eternal city. Oh look, there's Tom Coronel. The Dutchman joined Royal MotorSport for 2011, and before testing in Vallelunga, Tom used the opportunity to do some sightseeing.
Good one. Alan Manuel, Huff, Ivan Muller, who are more the biggest opponent. Engster, very fast. Don't forget Coronel. Yeah. You know Coronel?
No.
Coronel. Trust me. Yeah. Make a picture, no problem. Caesar, the king. Ivan. Gabriele, 2 world champions. Can I have these? Just for camera. Very cool. Un tartufo. Grazie. Cream.
Well, time now for some work. Tom having his first taste of the all-new BMW 320 TC at the Italian track of Vallelunga, just outside Rome.
In Christmas time, West Racing, they said, sorry, we will not race WTCC. And then I was driving to Scotland and I got a text message from Roberto Ravaglia. I said, Roberto? Huh? Where's he come from? You know, because I never thought in the beginning about Roberto, because he's new this year, 2011, because he wasn't there in 2010. And then he said, you have to call me now. So I called him and yeah, he just said, you have to come over to the workshop and let's see. And now I'm here driving the Royal BMW. The new BMW, it feels different than the older one, because I drove the older one 2 weeks ago and I started to drive with this one and I thought, uh-oh, I have to start all over again. Of course, it's nice that I drive again a rear-wheel drive car, because you know, you have the racing feeling, you know, and you can brake into the corners. But then with the 1.6 turbo engine, we have to change a lot, because the turbo, it's like a switch, you know, it's directly in, so it's power or no power. It's in the corner, the car is reacting completely different. Going into the corner, you don't have the braking from the engine as much as you had before. And the exit of the corner, you have so much power on the rear wheels. It's oh. So yeah, it's just a little bit adapting to how the car wants to drive.
Royal boss and former world champion Roberto Ravaglia knows Tom well. from the old days.
Pochi lo sanno. La sua prima corsa in turismo
Well,
l'ha fatta.
probably not a lot of people know that he did his first ever touring car race as my teammate. Was when I was racing in the Italian Championship with BMW Italy, and he was invited over to do the race. He was still very young. It was his first turn in a touring car, so really we've known each other for a very long time.
We're talking about 1993, and I was very young, of course. I did a race in Enna Pergusa at the Italian Class 2 Championship. Which was not successful because I completely crashed the car. I remember I was walking back to the pit with glass in my mouth, and I was like, oof, oof. Yeah, that car was completely banana. That was, and that's how I met Roberto Ravaglia. At that time, he was my teammate, and Umberto Grano was the team boss.
Now the real testing starts.
Well, Ravaglia and Umberto Grano teamed up for Royal Motorsport. Their goals will be very different from that race years ago in Enna. BMW may not have a factory entry, but it is a factory-developed car, and the Dutchman could certainly be a major factor in the 2011 championship.
I know the drivers, I know the championship, I know the tires, I know most of the circuits, so I should be try to challenge for the competition in the top. Yeah, the goal for Roberto, of course, is to win the championship. I've never been in competition to have a chance to win the championship, but I think this year there's a good chance to be in top 3 and to score every race good podiums.
All over the world, people come to Rome to make a wish. And obviously, it's the coin, and the wish is secret.
Well, it's Arrivederci Roma for the moment, but we'll be back in just a second. This is Newmarket, the horse racing capital of England, close to the university city of Cambridge. And it's the place that Rob Huff calls home. It's all a very different kind of horsepower to that we're used to associating him with. But here in Newmarket, the horse rules.
So here in Newmarket, the horses have priority when you're crossing the roads. Obviously, we have a few thousand horses every morning. If you accidentally hit a horse in the car, then you're 100% liable for this. This is the law here. Really, they rule Newmarket. They are the kings and queens of Newmarket. Morning.
So welcome then to Huff Towers as we catch up with Rob on an average day off.
So obviously here at home, I'm not the only one who lives in this house. I have some very special friends of mine that I'd like you to meet. So if you want to follow me, I'll introduce you. Hey. So here we have Minnie's this one. This is Dolly, the little choo-choo. And then we have Snoops, the Colonel as I call him over here, the eldest one. But for sure this one, the pink one with the Del Montes, this is the boss of the whole house, for sure.
Well, Rob hasn't strayed far from home. His parents live quite close as well.
So here we are in my old bedroom, which is now pretty much the memorabilia store where we keep all the photos and the nice memorabilia that we've collected over the years. I started go-karting when I was around 10 years old and just kind of really enjoyed it, obviously, and kept annoying my father until he would take me again. Although I started karting around the normal age, I wasn't doing the normal sort of karting that, you know, sort of the Formula One drivers effectively might do when they were younger. It wasn't the sprint races, it was all sort of very much endurance racing and a lot of indoor karting. And then, yeah, I started in cars really quite late when I was 19 years old. I would not change anything in my life. Really, there's nothing I would change. I really am living my dream. Every day is something different, is something fresh. To be able to race a car for a living and someone pays you to do this is really something very, very special. To compete with, you know, names that I grew up watching on television, Tarquini, Menu, Muller, Prio, you know, all of these guys I really sort of grew up aspiring to be, if you like. And now to have the opportunity to race against them, that's all part of the sort of the bubble, if you like, that's really the dream that I always wanted. And we struggled, but we found a way here. I have no idea why I'm capable of doing what I do. When I get in a car, I don't have to think about it. It's like second nature. And I think most professional drivers are like that. You don't, you know, if the car goes sideways, you don't think, oh, okay, now I need to put some opposite lock, or there's a corner coming, okay, now I need to brake. You just get there, and it's kind of like a computer system. It kind of just works out for itself. I think the best souvenir has to be from a picture that my girlfriend got made for me back in my house, just hanging above the stairs, was the podium of the 2006 Brno race. Halfway through the race, I remember looking in my rearview mirror thinking, right now, this is when the BMW is going to become strong. Well, halfway through the race, the front tyres are starting to go a little bit. And I looked in my rearview mirror and I remember seeing Prio with the back end hanging out with a bit of dust flying up. And I thought, okay, so he's pushing hard now. And yeah, we just managed to hold on until the end. And this is definitely one of my favourite memories of WTCC. The fond memories, the great memories are there straight away. But the worst memories, you have to take a few seconds to think about, because you kind of have to dig deep down to find them, to unlock the door and open them again. But for sure, one of the worst memories was Oschersleben 2010, when I got black flagged for something that really... I mean, we saw the end of season preview, both sort of Farfus and I. You know, at the end of the day, we both kind of agreed that the penalty was too strong. That was probably the biggest dent in the championship for me. So that was a hard one to swallow, if you like. But worst crash, if you like, has to be Mexico 2005, the first year in Mexico. Had a really big accident there, got turned round, hit the concrete wall backwards on the oval, had a nice little helicopter trip to hospital. Everything was fine, but that was definitely the worst experience that I've had in WTCC.
So normally something we do in the summer in Cambridge is get on the river and go for a bit of a punt round. We've got a guide with us today. He's going to take us around. It's a little bit cold, but come join me. We'll get under the blankets and have some fun.
Among the rule changes for 2011 will be the way that the Race 2 starting grid is decided. Instead of the top 8 from Race 1 being reversed, the grid will be the reverse of the top 10 from Q1, the first part of qualifying. So 10th fastest in Q1 will claim the Race 2 pole, and the fastest will be in 10th place. The aim to stop drivers dropping places at the end of Race 1. But will they now try and gamble for 10th?
Cannot go, okay, now I go for 10th place, like you do when you go for pole position. You can't do that. But for sure, you can, we have radios, we have engineers that are watching timing screens. You can see who's going out where, and you know what the pole position time is. You're going to know what 10th position place time is, because your engineer can tell you. And so you're going to know roughly where you need to slot in what sort of a lap time. And the best position is going to be the person who leaves last in qualifying with enough time to do that lap. The last person to cross the line has the best
best chance of being on 10th place. And for me, everyone in Brazil is going to go when there is 2 minutes 30 seconds left.
Well, there's more than 2 minutes 30 seconds left of our preview, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this short word. Well, here is the 2011 entry list, starting with world champion of Armula car number 1. Rookie Alexei Dudicalo is number 4 in his Seat. Norbert Michaelis moves from Seat to BMW. Kaka Bueno joins the season as an occasional entry. Daryl Young joined by Yukinori Taniguchi at Bamboo. They'll change to the new 1.6 turbo Cruise from Zolder onwards. Former Grand Prix GP2 driver Javi Villa will debut in a Pro Team BMW in the series. Robert Dahlgren and James Thompson may well both appear for Volvo. Well, a Singleton Volvo C30 has been entered for the full championship season in the hands of Robert Dahlgren. Both Robert and the Swedish team Polestar that'll run it have World Touring Car experience. The aim here to test the waters in view of a possible full factory entry as early as 2012. And James Thompson's also involved with the project. The Yorkshireman will spend most of his season racing in the Scandinavian Touring Car Championships, but he'll develop this car and could partner Dahlgren in Donington Park and possibly in the last Asian races at the end of the season. It's not a done deal, but it'd be great to see him back behind the wheel. At the end of February, Thiago Monteiro revealed his season's plans to the media in Lisbon. He'll start the season with a diesel-engined Seat Leon. He should have a new 1.6 turbo by the end of May or the beginning of June.
There's
a lot that's unclear so far about this season. It's not really possible these days to say what the performance of the various different cars is going to be, because we haven't, for one, tested an awful lot this season, and not against the others. We know Chevrolet have done a lot of testing, more than 4,000 kilometres. BMW did plenty of testing as well. But still, with everybody testing separately, there are a lot of question marks. Start of the season is going to be a bit of a tough one for us, there's no doubt about that. We're going to have maybe 30, maybe even 40 horsepower less than our rivals in this championship. If you're 40 horsepower down, you really are going to struggle. So in the first few races, we're going to suffer. We'll try and score points where we can, but a win or a podium is going to be tough. Here's the 2011 calendar, and after the opener in Curitiba, the teams head back to Europe, to Zolder, then to Monza. The street race in Marrakesh has been cancelled. The replacement venue in the same date yet to be announced. After the championship heads to Czech Republic, it goes to the streets of Thiago Monteiro's hometown in Porto. And for the first time, the UK race will be at Donington Park. After the European season tails off, 3 flyaway races in Asia. New to the championship will be Suzuka and the brand new facility at Guangdong on mainland China, and then on to the traditional finale on the streets of Macau. Well, after Silverstone and then 5 years at Brands Hatch, the World Touring Car Championship moves north in the UK to the reopened Donington Park. Since the 1930s, Donington has been a favourite with drivers and crowds alike, as Rob Huff explains.
Everyone in British motorsport really loves. It's a really fast, flowing circuit. They've done a lot of development with the circuit over the last few years, making a few new corners. The racing is very fast there, but at the same time, you know, we were talking earlier about the 1600 for me being easier to make a mistake with. Donington is a circuit which is easy to make a mistake with, and it costs you a lot there, really. There's very small amount of room for error there. And really, I think it's for me. There's a lot more overtaking places there than any other UK circuit that we might have visited.
Changes in Japan too. After 3 years in Okayama, the series moves to one of the world's most famous tracks at Suzuka. The World Touring Car Championship won't use the full Grand Prix layout, but one of our stars knows the short circuit just as well.
It's been built by a Dutchman. That's one, Hugenholz, senior. And I know the circuit quite well because I drove there a lot. Formula 3, Formula Nippon, GT cars. So I think Suzuka is a nice place for touring cars. Of course, the Japanese crowd. And of course, Suzuka. I mean, you know, you have the Grand Prix of Suzuka. Suzuka is well known. And there's some tricks in this circuit as well.
And for the first time, the World Touring Cars will touch down in mainland China for the penultimate round of the season. It'll be in Guangdong, one of the most dynamic regions of China, not far from Macau, where the season finale will still take place. So for the drivers and teams, it's going to be a venture into the new.
The thing that I really like about the end of this year is going to be the fact that the last 3 rounds are within 5 weeks of each other. You know, always we have sort of a 5 or 6 week gap between the penultimate round and Macau. And for me, I'd rather just get it over and done with.
So as you can see, the clock is now ticking. It's time for Curitiba.
And coverage starts live at 5 p.m. GMT on Saturday this weekend.
That's a crap question.
Join the stars then and find out how it goes. Until then, goodbye for now.
Really boring. Thinking about when you're going to use the tyre.